What's going on, family? So, as you can see, we're upgrading some studio equipment and getting a few things on the road. So it's a pretty exciting time. Also on the personal and also on the business side. So, we're doing interviews, we're going on site visits, we're knocking out some pending work. We're working with vendors to create better opportunities for them to create lasting relationships. And I'll give you an example. I have a proposal, well, an invoice actually, two separate invoices for some emergency services that were provided at a property, and I'm reviewing these invoices, and I told the contractor, I said, look, it's an emergency service, this is the kind of stuff that we need emergency responses, and you need to bill exactly what you think is necessary, and I'll review it. And I'm looking at this stuff, and it's like installation of X, Y, and Z material, $125. And I'm looking at that, and I'm like, if anybody who's anybody who could fog a mirror who's breathing is going to look at that charge and say, what are you doing? And we're going to have to bring that level of awareness when preparing tomorrow. I'm going to do it, basically filtering out the bullshit, just stuff that just absolutely, we can't have that in this invoice. And the reason is that anybody, again, anybody who's competent is going to look at that charge and is going to say, okay, that took you $125 to do that. I could have done that myself, and these are the kinds of things where, you as a vendor, you're going to have to provide that level of service, that level of confidence in your clientele to look them in the eye and basically say, these are the kinds of things that I charge for, and I want to be a reasonable charge. I do want to provide a level of service that you could care and depend on, but also I want to charge reasonably. And finding those kinds of vendors, and training those kinds of thought patterns and ideas with vendors is something that, we're going to be working with going forward. But also just spread across, the grand scheme of all things is, it does cost money to live in New York. This is the kind of stuff that, we do also have to negotiate good understanding on a client side, is that it does cost X amount of dollars to send a vendor out there to look at X, Y, and Z, or to do this repair, or to give you a professional analysis of what's going on in the field. So, we're delicately balancing those kinds of things. We're also upgrading some stuff on management sides. We're working on a new hub. I'm working with AI. That's absolutely just been a game changer in terms of whatever scripting, programming, or whatever the actual field is, where you would hire somebody to create this hub or this level of information support, I guess you would kind of say, this level of support that I'm looking to create for the management team. So going forward, it's going to be a lot easier to track some of the more, some of the more detailed, automated functions that we want to get through, that sometimes can clog up a pipeline when you're focusing on repairs and maintenance, when you're focusing on new business, when you're focusing on some of the more pronounced tasks, delicate tasks, such as dealing with interpersonal relationships between tenant owners and vendors, or new clients, and also trying to skate on with having to support vendors to finalize good scopes of work and details like that. So the hub is a really exciting opportunity for me to kind of merge such an old school industry where we're literally taking over management accounts for people who are, as potential clients have said, it's like they sold me on everything and then we just found a steady decline, and it's like, nah, I've heard that before. This is how we do things. This is where we are at. This is what you should expect going forward from managing agents. This is where the industry is. This is what we're gravitating towards. Here's what we're creating for our clients, the opportunities that we're creating for our clients. And a big part of that is shifting from the idea that the property manager is coming to your property 24/7, 365 days a year, mapping out scopes of work, working basically dictating what needs to go on at your property, force feeding information to boards, demanding certain types of repairs and maintenance, locking in their own vendors and contractors. It's like those days are done. That's what you call sucker management. That's what you call idiocy management. You just get people who wanted to create a job for themselves and create an opportunity to just milk your property out of tens of millions of dollars over a lifetime. Some of these properties are locked in with their managing agent for 25, 30 years before they find out that there have been some really weak foundations built for proper management. And then we go in there and we gave them the laydown. It's like, look, we build the relationships that are necessary for your property to get the information that it needs in order to make decisions. That's budgeting 101, vendor management 101, managing your property manager 101, setting expectations 101. What is it like to be an investor and not actually have a hand in everything that goes on in your investment property in a condo or co-op? What is that like? What is that also like for a single family or a multifamily? How is it that we could hire a managing agent to manage those kinds of things while still being a part of the team? Because very rarely for the portfolios that we manage is a vendor going to do work at the property, send an owner a bill, and then the owner passes it on to the managing agent. Usually the managing agent, as long as I'm managing a property, I want to be that point of contact. But I also want to be the liaison between the landlord, tenant, and vendor so that everybody is on the same page. And that only happens with hopping on a phone call, sending out an email, being available for text messages, having a team that's prepared to get that next step done. Setting expectations. Sometimes we'll get calls from vendors and they'll say, for example, I have a project that we've been waiting for this vendor to get this work done, and he calls me up and it's the fateful hour, and it's like, I know that we postponed long enough, but I need another. I can't do it tomorrow. It's like I've had a job lined up and I've been working on it and I was expecting to get done with it either Thursday or Friday, and it's just not turning out that way. And I said, look, it's not what I expect, but it's just what we've got to work with. Let me make a couple of phone calls and let me see what I could do. And I had to show, I just went into the mode that I felt was most comfortable. It's like, I am disappointed. This is not what I want to hear, but we're gonna figure this out. And you could hear it on the other line. It's like, man, I'm sorry. It's like, I know, I get it. But this is what we're here for. We're here to manage those expectations, get things done. I'm not going to sit here and bark at you, but work needs to be done, and we need to be that guy who's going to fill in those voids, get the communication across, and we scheduled it for next week, Saturday. Tenant was more than happy to arrange access for next week. They just can't provide access during Monday through Friday. So these are the things that we're just going to have to work on, as a community, things that we're looking to build, as far as, the social media, and me on the business end is, sending out, free advice, free content, just free ways of being, things that can make it so much simpler for you to go out there and make a killing. I mean, there's so much money to be made in real estate. It's absolutely ridiculous, but it takes some groundwork. It takes some getting involved. It takes a lot of sacrifice to understand what the problems are internally, so that you could also clean out those things internally, so that when you get into the field, you could see where those things are and you can make those adjustments and you can make those corrections on the fly. You could have those things set so that you can just move on with your work, just move on with the repair process, just move on with the vendor management or the board management or the managing the property manager or the tenant management, the owner management, figuring out what is it that you could do on the fly so that you just get the job done. Again, get clients from point A to point B. Where are you at? Where do you want to go? I was on an interview today and basically they said the golden rule is communication, and we've not been experiencing that with our current managing agent, and we're looking for a switch. And I said, I get that, like we go on these interviews pretty often and here's what we do. And I said, this is what we do. And I'm not looking to be your friend in the sales process. What I'm looking to do is just get you a good idea of what it is that I do and how I can help, and be that forever. Be that thing that I sold for you on day one. Be that thing forever. So I have to be certain with what this thing is. What is it that I'm selling you on? I'm selling you on the peace of mind based on this scope of work, based on what I have in writing. But yeah, it was a fun interview. It definitely taught me a little bit more about the sales process and a little bit more about what I look for in a client. No client is perfect. We're all going to be each other's asshole for once in a while. There's always going to be an opportunity for you to get above that, still get the job done, and not look like an asshole. And that's what we strive to be. Again, we're dealing with high-level assets. The highest level assets that people are ever going to deal with in their entire life is going to be a bulk of it is real estate. And we're that active party who's available 24/7, 365 days a year for comments, questions, or concerns. Anything from, I have a mouse in my unit, and Shen, I can't do this, all the way up to, my building is falling apart, and we need a 6-figure project to put this thing back together. Devastating numbers, I get it, but it exists. This level of care that's needed in the community exists. Also, training better property managers. I don't know what's going on in the field, but property management is one of the highest turnover. It's just the highest. I believe it's the highest turnover job in real estate, but probably one of the highest turnover jobs, just apart from sales in general, but one of the highest turnover jobs in the world is managing these other people's investments and trying to set the expectations so that we can get quality work done. I'm going to be launching some free courses, man, and I hope people pay attention. I want to sell this stuff for free, but I want to be able to get this stuff in front of people who matters. So that we could all start being a little better. I'm hearing some of these comments and questions. It's like, what is it that it takes? What does it take to be a manager that's worth having? What does it take to be that person's manager? It takes a lot of asking the questions, like, what is it that you're looking for? How is this going to look and feel for you? What expectations do you have? And that's also when you set apart the kooky client all the way to this is somebody who's reasonable, somebody I could expect some ups and downs with, and we're gonna make a process that works for them. And they might not totally be happy with it, but it's a process that works, and it makes sense on all the parts that they want it to make sense on, and that's fine. But there are some kooky clients out there, and I've signed some contracts with some kooky clients. But it's like, no, I will not show up to your property with a body cam every time I go there 3 times a week, as you request. I'm not doing it. I didn't sign that contract, but I was close. There's a couple of things I'm willing to do for money, but one of them these days does not work for kooky clients. I'm not there anymore. And also, I find it a little hard to differentiate sometimes between the kooky client and the one that's the one that's going to be a good fit. But we're willing to jump in and deal with the mess, and then filter it out. Is this something that I want to keep in my life? Is this the lifestyle that I want? Do I want to get up every single day worrying if this client is taken care of because they just don't take care of their property? Now it's like a trickle-down effect. It's like they don't want to put in money, therefore their property's falling apart. I get the calls and they don't want to do the repairs, and now I suffer. It's like my mental health suffers. I don't want that. But, hey, look, this was just a test video. Also, we got some new equipment. We got some new mics, but just wanted to give you guys an update on where we're at. And things are looking good. We're keeping busy. We're, just business-wise and personal-wise, keeping busy, fixing around the house, part of a flag football team. It's been pretty productive, but, we're just trucking along, getting work done, and it feels great. So definitely looking to be a part of something a little bigger. Again, we're starting the more pronounced social media aspects of launching some free courses, property management in general. How is it that you could be a better investor? How is it that you could budget better? And how do you just basically take better control of your life, take better inventory of where you're at, so that the dreams and the goals and the aspirations that you have, you can make those things happen a lot sooner when you get systematic on inventory. Where are you at? Where do you want to go? How is it that you can get there? There's some basic processes that you can install, and that's what we're going to teach. We're going to teach those basic processes, things that just make sense for you to get right the first time, every single time, so that you can just move on with your life and you say, hey, look, like, I want to do that, and there's no crap in the way, or very little crap in the way. And then also you have tools for adjusting, because life is just going to throw you curveballs, and that's just the way that it is. But yeah, we're working on different, we're working on some different lighting and how do I look better. But it's a work in progress here as well. All right, guys, signing out. Peace.